guys, my name is Sean Romao and I'm the host for today. So we welcome you. We are from IIC DJSCE cell. Today we have a very reputed guest with us joining today. He is Mr. Dhruv Dewan and he's the co-founder of Thrive. Also, he's an alumni of DJSCE College. He passed out in 2012 and he's from IT department. So we welcome you, Mr. Dhruv Dewan.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So we would like to hear from you how what Thrive is, and how you have established Thrive. Because being from an engineering background, it is very difficult to have a startup. So please.
Yeah, no, I think Thrive started a while ago.
Yeah.
I think in a different avatar, we started our entrepreneurial journey with #loyalty.
Right.
I think idea that time was to see how we can help offline retailers leverage their data and make better decisions. That's when sort of we went to market, we decided which industry to work with. I think cut short to 2020, what we realized was once the pandemic hit, we went and spoke to a lot of our customers and we asked them, what is your biggest problem today? And a lot of the restaurants or retailers that we spoke to, commerce was the highest sort of or the largest problem for them.
Right.
Commerce in terms of how can they deliver, how can they stay relevant during those times. I think Thrive was born out of a need for ourselves and for the community at large. We quickly put together a product. We went and spoke to 100 customers and we launched it in beta in the same year. So I think that's when the journey started. The product is very different from when it started,
Right.
and it's very different from when we originally launched. So there have been several iterations, but that's just to kind of get started. That's been the journey.
So just giving a background to our audience, Mr. Dhruv Dewan graduated from DJSCE College in 2012. He worked in a corporate job for 3 years. In 2015, when loyalty was found, and then he took a pivot in 2020 towards Thrive, and Thrive is now focusing majorly on online platforms. It's basically where restaurants can put up their menus, they can order, the customers can order online. So that is where Thrive is now focusing on, and since 2020 they are growing year by year, every year. So now let's just come to your college life. Okay, so what was your best and worst experience in your college?
I think best experience, to be very honest, was the friends you make.
Okay.
I think it's engineering is a tough journey.
Right.
I think for 4 years. So I think the people you meet, the ones probably you study with, the projects you do, I think those are probably people that you take on into your network for life.
Right.
I think that's probably been or continues to be my best memory. I think worst memory is an interesting question, but I think would probably be those long breaks between exams,
Yeah.
where you're kind of done, but you need to sort of have some fun, but also go back to studying
Right.
after a day or
Yes,
two.
yes.
I remember we used to have a 5-day break between exams, and it used to go on for about a month and a half. So I think that wasn't a very like fun process, but that's what comes to mind right now.
But I wouldn't possibly call it as a worst experience, because that's when you get to join with your friends and be live, right? So,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think I wasn't the most studious.
Okay.
I think I always had this bug in me from very early on to get into business.
Right.
And I think that translated sometimes by having slightly lesser interest, maybe in certain subjects.
Okay.
But in hindsight, I think what I learned in college, I continue to implement, obviously, more from a hardships and conceptual learning perspective, but rest is I think, broader journey over the last 10 years.
Going back to the point where you said that college was where you were thinking about entrepreneurship a lot. So how did college influence you towards entrepreneurship, and did you actually start a business during your college life?
No, so I think it was an interesting phase. I think, and I'm sure you and you all fellow students as well might be going through a lot of thought process, conversations, whether you wanna. I think at that point, usually there were two options, right? Do you want to work or do you want to study further?
Correct.
And there was sort of run-of-the-mill conversations going on. I think in my personal life, I think have been influenced by a lot of entrepreneurs close to me as well over maybe the last a decade before entering college. So I think I've been seeing a lot of people run successful businesses, and that's something that was always a thought at the back of my mind. I think what I realized when I spoke to a lot of mentors at that point was that uh, I would need some form of experience to understand how the world works at large, which during college I wasn't getting, and hence I decided to work. Um, I think I would have probably worked for longer, but I think I realized probably in year two, year three, that I have a lot more to offer, and I'd like to grow significantly faster. And I think that's when I met a couple of my co-founders, and that's when we decided that it's time to kind of begin our own venture. Easier said than done. I think the number of mistakes that we made probably led us to a point where we are. But we pivoted multiple times, we burned a lot of money. Idea there's been a steep learning curve, which I feel eventually you only get once you do something and fail. Difficult to kind of theoretically absorb that through books or by internships. So, but I think that's been the journey per se, leading to an entrepreneurship.
So, actually, a lot of people do say this that having an MBA degree sort of helps you with the entrepreneurship journey, or it helps you with finances and all these stuff. So, do you believe that having an MBA degree really resonates to building a startup?
I think studying always adds value in different ways. So, whether be it any degree, but I wouldn't necessarily equate a B school degree to a startup founder. Um, Today, my team is yet small. We're trying to solve a very large problem with about 70 people. We do have people from all sorts of backgrounds, right? So when I see people that are working at Thrive, um, the entrepreneurial spirit, in my opinion, doesn't have anything to do with the level of education. It depends on the individual's hunger, ability to learn, and sort of execute. I think what maybe an MBA does is if you're looking to get experience, it may help you land with a opportunity which might be a little larger than without an MBA. But I think it has no relevance if you want to be a founder. I think as your corporate journey, it definitely creates an impact. It gives you that up. But as a founder, I think it has, forget negligible, I think it has no impact.
Because many people they do say that if you're doing MBA and you go to a good college, then you get good networking because you have people coming to MBA. Obviously, they do more of startups. They are more interested into developing businesses. So you get a good network where you can kind of take help from anyone you need. Because if let's say I am an engineering student, if I don't do MBA, I don't have that much network within me where I can obviously take help from a person who knows about anything. Right?
No, it definitely helps to know people who are at your stage or come from different backgrounds. But I think what's happened is maybe 15, 20 years ago, this theory was definitely 100% true. But what's happened in the last 15 years is the startup ecosystem has risen so much. There are multiple avenues, whether it's events or networking conversations, or in my opinion, the journey starts with being incubated. and so on and so forth, right? So I think there you probably need right-minded people. I think eventually, if you want to be connected to someone, and you have an objective, everyone in this ecosystem, small to big, would be ready to have one conversation with. It's about approaching the right individual with the right messaging, and the right objective, right? So I don't think it's not an either or. But yeah, what you're saying probably was the only way to network maybe a few decades ago. That's not the case in at least in our ecosystem right now. There's a lot of action happening here. So yeah, things have changed.
Right. So, when you said that you have a team of 70 people and you also have your co-founders with you. So, how do you think making a good team adds a value to the startup? And plus, how do you build a good team? It is very important for your core team to be really specific with things, to take up things, because every time the core team can come to you and just, juggle for a small which mistake was. So, what do you think on that?
I think it's a two-way street, right? One side, founders need to learn how to delegate. You don't do that in your early days, and you feel you want to execute everything with a certain amount of quality. So you want to interfere in every aspect of the business. So I think founders also need to realize that if you're looking to build a scalable business, not a services business, a scalable product business, then you're going to need probably an army of folks who are like-minded and can own different parts of the business, right? Same way, I think from anybody who is joining Thrive or any other startup, right? It's very important. They add value. How can they add value? You need to not only explain the role to them, but also take them through what is the company's objective. In our internal jargon, we always have a North Star. A North Star is something that is one parameter. Every team may have different things, but if you culminate everything, it comes to one parameter that we're looking to influence month on month, quarter on quarter, year on year. So for some people, it might be revenue. Some people, it might be positive unit economics. It can be a list of different parameters. I think once an employee understands what that North Star is and fine tunes their actionables according to that, they tend to add more value. Likewise, I think it's very important to create an environment for people to learn, give them a free hand. But I think it's easier said than done. I think over the years, I've realized the quality of people we get is getting better because we also know how to hire better now. We know what red flags to look for, kind of people we don't want. Earlier, it was maybe a round based on who can execute what. Now we have culture fit. We have 6 rounds that we go through from an employee perspective. The idea is to really find people who are interested and will add value, and we will add value. So I think it's a long process, and I think it takes time to kind of get there.
Right. So, as you said about taking people on board. So, asking about that, if let's say there is a person who wants to join your company, what are the parameters you'll be looking? Let's give an example on this itself. I'm a marketing person. I want to join your company. I want to join Thrive. What will you be looking in me? Coming from a marketing background, because nowadays marketing is very much confused with people of how we can do marketing, and marketing plays a very important role when it is about the service business. So what do you think you'll be looking on me?
Yeah, so I think gone are the times where we look at marketing as a whole,
Okay.
right? So internally we look at 4 different teams within marketing. There's brand, there's content, there's performance, right? And there is your partnerships, strategic alliances, right? All these 4 have a very different skill set. Content is someone who understands the product and knows every campaign that we run. This person will ensure that the content is on point and it's leading to better conversion, different parameters. Performance is all about understanding every maybe channel out there, from a YouTube to Meta to Truecaller, the list goes on. Hotstar now, Geo Cinema has opened up their ad platform. The idea is to understand how to market on that, and how I can run the most optimized campaign. Right, brand is very different, right? Um, Usually, if you think about it, when you see something again and again, that's when you remember a particular brand, right? So creating a brand is a very challenging exercise, and that's why people specialize in that area, right? And your alliances, of course, is more offline, billboards, migrate, and the list goes on. In at least I'm talking about the India ecosystem. So I think very important for the person who's applying to understand which of these areas within marketing they want to influence, right? If I were applying, I would probably look at creating a case study by looking at how the company has executed within that area. Maybe I'll pick an ad that they've run or some piece of content that they've run. I will assume what the company's goal is, and I will try and see how I can better that campaign. Once you're able to do that and build it into your application, it will automatically catch the eye of the employer to understand A, this person is thinking in the direction of the company, and B, has put in some effort rather than just sharing a generic resume or one of those chat GPT emails, right, from an application perspective. So I think everyone sees through that, and that's how people stand out as well.
Wait, this is actually something different which we have heard till now. So, now coming to the point where founders actually, it goes very difficult for them to sometimes manage things. How do you manage retention of your employees? And secondly, how do you manage the core team's decisions? Like everybody, if you're sitting in a meeting room, everybody has different opinions about an idea. So 10 different people, 10 different ideas about the thing. How do you manage them so that nobody feels low-hearted that their idea is not selected? And how do you handle that?
So I think we don't do group discussions.
Okay.
Because you don't want anyone to feel that they are not heard.
Yeah, right.
Everyone documents what they want to do. We use an internal chat platform called Slack, where the whole team has access to each other. And then you post what you're working towards or what your thought process is, and you be a little detailed and you sort of present that. Right? So, two parts to your question. I think from an how do we manage expectation?
Yes.
I think it's very important to have a single leader for every area. It might be me, it might be my co-founder, or it might be someone else in the team. I think if we're having a discussion, let's say around branding, I will not make that decision. The brand head will make that decision. If the brand head is not successful in his or her campaign, then I will relay that feedback and I may cut budgets in the next campaign. But I will not make that decision. The person who is owning the area makes that decision. So there is always one leader who has the final yes or no. There cannot be multiple people deciding, right? And that person has to own it if it works or if it doesn't.
Yes.
Right? I think from a retention perspective, money, everybody wants amazing appraisal. So I think that's something that people look forward to. So I think that's one. The second is also important to treat all employees very respectfully, treat them with a sense of passion. And I think as long as they see themselves growing and the company growing, I feel retention is not always a challenge. There are times people go through certain phases in life where they may need maybe a higher increment or some form of support. We try to help in whatever way we can, depending on what our capacity is.
So, do you all have anything which sort of helps the employees build them? Like now, many companies have started this like insurance and helping with other perspectives.
Yes, we work with Plum. All our entire team is insured, not only for you but for your dependents as well. So those are benefits that we always share. We work on an unlimited leave policy, where no questions asked. People can take how much ever time they want. If someone is abusing the system, we ask them to leave the company. But the idea is to always keep things in a very transparent manner. But we offer significant amount of benefits during COVID. We allow people to buy their gear and whatever they need from a work from home perspective. Laptops are sent by us to the entire team. So I think that's the host of things that we do, which is outside of CDC. But idea is we take care of them and we take care of the company.
Great.
So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah. So, starting from 2015 till now, 2024, where we stand, and how you're looking thrive after 2030. Like, after, what is your vision towards, look, where do you look thrive after 10 years? And what do you think over these years, how thrive has been growing, in not in terms of numbers, but in terms of the culture and the value that you are adding to the society?
Yeah, no, I think try and summarize. I think first part first. The industry that we work in, which is the food commerce industry, currently is at 8%. What I mean is that 8 out of 100 F&B restaurants today are digitized. 92% aren't. We're at a very early stage in India. This number has gone from about 6% to 8% because of COVID. Otherwise, we were sort of flirting with that number for about 5 years. A lot of other mature economies, this number is around 50 to 55%. Right? You always have an unorganized sector, but the gap is very large. Right? When we look at other, maybe Brazil or China, in terms of their growth within the industry, India will probably get there in another 7 to 8 years, right? We're relatively behind. So I think for us, coming back from a growth point of view, as we call in our language, the TAM, the target addressable market, the TAM is in itself growing. So I need to keep doing what I'm doing. The number of people I can sell my product to is expanding on its own for the next 7 to 8 years, and hence we're in this industry. It's not a saturated industry. It's a new industry, right? So I think as long as we're doing quality work, I feel there is a very good chance for us to significantly scale from now to 2030. I'll give you one example. One of our investors is soft drink company called the Coca-Cola.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So I think all of us know Coke, Thumbs Up, etc. When I talk to them, their leadership, global and India, it's very clear that the number of restaurants they sell their Coke to today is at about 1.5 million, which is about 15 lakh.
Right.
The number of restaurants on maybe aggregator platforms today pan India is about 2 lakhs, right? So that gap in itself is so large, and then there is a gap beyond that, right? So from a numbers perspective, I think our goal is to kind of work towards bridging that gap. The reason we partnered with such an investor is they help us sort of reach pin codes and locations that we may take longer to reach. We would be able to reach them, but the idea is to do it with somebody who has executed in the past and has the resources. So we work with them closely to understand how we can reach them faster.
So, now you mentioned Coke. So, can you explain how you got that investment? Like, from a perspective of how Thrive took an investment from Coke. Coke backing Thrive is actually a very big news. So, could you explain us how,
I think this was in 2022. The Coke team had reached out to us to see how we can work together for certain objectives that they had and certain objectives that we had. Conversation started there. I think after 4 or 5 months, we realized, both of us, that a commercial arrangement is not going to work because the amount of work both parties will need to do is going to be very large if we want to achieve our objectives. So I think that's when Coke landed up speaking internally and figuring out if they can be involved as an equity investor. Because once they're in the company, it is easier for us to work together. We don't need to think of who's spending on what resources. We can together try and solve this problem, right? So I think it was a journey of about 12 months, starting from partnership conversations to getting them on our cap table, right? So I think, but that's how it started, and that's where we are, right?
So, COVID is when you started in 2020, and that's when COVID struck. So, how did it actually affect Thrive? Because what happened was during COVID, people used to order everything online. So, majorly the food delivery platforms they had a growth. So, what was Thrive's situation when? Because you just started by 2020, and directly COVID struck.
No, that's not that way. I think COVID struck,
Yeah.
and then we started.
Okay.
It wasn't, we weren't operating before COVID.
Okay.
I think we were flirting with the idea.
Yeah.
And in March 2020, I think
COVID.
COVID happened.
Yeah.
I think in April, somehow on various Zoom and Google Meets with my co-founders and my core team, we felt now is a good time to move away from what we've been doing, and a great opportunity for us to get into a significantly larger problem, right? So I think that's when we started. I remember we went live in Bandra here only with a few restaurants. Somehow we used to get out to see how the delivery is happening from an operations standpoint. So that was an interesting 6 months. I used to do all the customer support. It helped me understand what problems we are facing on ground. One of my co-founders was looking at tech, and the third one on product and marketing. But I think that was a very interesting. But it's the other way around, not like how you mentioned.
Yeah.
We started it after COVID happened.
So you actually use third-party fleet system. So does it actually affect? Because what happens is with other food delivery, they have their own fleet system. So do you think that not having your own delivery system kind of makes the process a little bit slower?
Well, that's a great question. I think if I would have started Thrive in 2015, 2016, yes. I think today, logistics, which we call in from a third party perspective, has become a commodity.
Right.
It's the same rider working with a set of platforms and being able to deliver. The other platforms as well don't have 100% of their fleet that is owned by them. They work with the same contractual partners. What they do is in certain pin codes, once they reach a certain scale, they then start paying people, which is also not on employee, it is on contract basis, which is again via third party. So it's a very interesting puzzle. We believe we have optimized it. Our per kilometer delivery in Mumbai is 5.2 minutes. With payers is about 5 minutes, so we're just a little off. So I think that's something that we continuously look to optimize, right? We also work with, surprisingly, we also work with one of the platforms. His fleet delivers our orders. So it's a very complicated ecosystem.
Yes.
We also have one of our other investors called Jubilee Foods, which runs Domino's.
Yeah.
So we're also working with them to use their fleet.
Okay.
So I think I don't think we're at a disadvantage. I see it as an advantage because we are asset light, and that helps us sort of scale faster. But you're right. I think if we would have launched maybe 5-7 years ago,
Yes.
this industry wasn't so mature.
Yeah.
Things have really changed in COVID. And when you speak to people who are part of this industry, more than me, in fact, who are working in these contractual partners, you'll be surprised how much of a commodity is become.
Because what happens is when now, as you said, so this is a very scattered market. Same thing happened with Ola and Uber. Ola and Uber, one driver used to drive for Ola and Uber both at the same time. That used to happen. So when a company used to pay a driver more, they used to switch there. So being this so much scattered, it actually affects a lot of consumer bases, right?
Yeah, but I think, see, we are a dhanda nation.
Yes.
The rider is going to calculate. He has to pay rent for his bike. He has to pay fuel. Now, obviously, we're working with Ola Electric and Zip. E-bikes are coming in. But otherwise, there's fuel costs and they usually need to pay a rental for their bike or scooter as well. And then they need to make their daily wages. You do what you want contractually or from an app perspective. Rider will get a new SIM card, rider will have a spare phone. They will figure out a way to beat the system. I think what a rider is concerned with is ensuring that in a month they are making more than 20 to 22,000 rupees. Whichever platform, one or multiple, gets the rider the income, that's where they're going to be. As of this moment, I think this is more of a perceived problem. I feel our fleet on ground does a fantastic job.
Okay.
Across contract partners, across other platforms, at the speed at which it's come up and at the rate at which it is growing, I think it is an anomaly to a lot of other ecosystems. So I think this is as good as it gets. Idea is to support it, not try to beat it and put restrictions.
Yeah. So offline marketing has been a little bit ignored sector from a couple after COVID, basically, to be honest. So do you think it actually gets you customers because putting a billboard on a highway which has a lot of content on it, because I was watching a podcast in the morning and there was a billionaire from Germany. He said in Germany billboards are not very much what people prefer, but billboards they put a small line and they put huge logo because the span time of a person watching that is about 30 to 40 seconds. So उसे एक line पढ़ेगा, he will understand what you need to convey. So what do you think from that perspective? India में ऐसा market हो सकता है कि we will still be focusing towards online marketing because अभी digital marketing is what people are more focusing. They're taking skills in that. So offline marketing is बहुत ज़्यादा.
It's a complicated answer. In my opinion, till a company reaches a certain stage, affording offline is anyway not a question. Now, what are the limitations of offline? Is today on digital platforms, you get cost of install, cost of order, what my drop-offs are. I get a lot of funnel information, so I know how to optimize and make it better.
Right.
When it comes to offline, in our opinion, performance campaigns can't be run. You can't put up something and expect people to buy it. What can be done when you do offline is brand building, right? So it's very interesting when companies are looking to spend on traction, they will always look at digital.
Right.
But when they're looking to do brand building, usually they will try to do a mixture of both, which is offline and online, only if they can afford it. So offline is more expensive. But if you look at how our traditional players and the named brands you have, they are platforms who never shy away from offline. But they do it once they've reached a certain scale. So I think it's a very interesting split, but it takes a lot of companies to get to a stage before they can even think about it. But this is our understanding. Like I said, from a growth, performance, and brand should be looked at separately, and then to kind of influence it. But I think I am very pro offline. Maybe I am also of one generation before you. But I think when I see something offline, for me it helps build trust.
Yeah.
And that's very important, especially if it's a high ticket order, right? If I'm spending more than X.
Because Cadbury majorly does billboards a lot, and recently during Valentine's Day, they put scanners, so you can scan that, you can make your own things. So they're majorly focused towards offline marketing a lot. They don't prefer this.
I think to each its own.
Yeah, right.
It's very difficult, but I think at the right time there will always be a blended sort of action plan. But I think when people are picking up skills on digital, they're always looking at it from a performance marketing perspective. In my opinion, growth and which is performance marketing should only be done on,
Okay.
right? Because you know where the problem is. You know after how many seconds the user is dropping.
Right.
Is your creative horrible? Is your content horrible? Is your drop off happening at your payments page? Maybe he's comparing prices. The whole life cycle is so clear.
Yeah.
You can reverse engineer what you need to kind of make better. So performance is key.
So when we talk about major brands who do marketing, they're always focused on emotions. As we all know, India is an emotional market. अगर आप एक consumer के साथ relate करते हो, they become your ground base. So do you think marketing में अभी भी now after COVID and in these recent years, emotion has been a major key for getting a consumer, or it's just the natural way? Because now India has become a very cost sensitive market. They're focusing on quality and on the price a lot. So, do you think that emotional connect is still important towards marketing?
I think India is the toughest market,
Yeah.
in my opinion. People want the best for free. It's just it's a complicated mindset.
Yeah.
I think emotions will always play a role. I think it's a way to kind of get into the consumer's mind. So I think that's a given. I think in India, being sensitive to cost is critical. So whether you're being emotional, you need to back it up with some form of offer. Obviously, if you're building a luxury business, you're going after a very different cohort, then price sensitivity doesn't come in. But I think it starts with knowing who your customer is
Yeah.
and what is going to influence them. But emotion for me is more from a relatability perspective. How can you make your ad or your content relatable to that person? You can maybe do it emotionally. You can even maybe do it in a humorous manner. It can be different ways. So I think the catch is how do I make it relatable for my audience by also knowing who my audience is. So I think that's at least the thought process. Obviously, different products, different industries,
Yeah.
different markets, different consumer bases. It is not generalized approach here.
Yeah. Completely depends on what your brand is and how you can tackle it. So coming into our major point, major startups which are now coming up, they're funded. Majorly, nobody does a bootstrap business, due to which many business owners say that they are failing because they have money, so they don't know how to sustain in the market. Whenever they are falling, they always look for investment. They rise up, and then again they fall. So looking at an academy now and Byju's, everything, they are majorly like this. Do you think that startups are facing many problems in growth sector, and how can, as you being a startup owner, what do you think? How can you tackle and you can grow as a founder?
So I think first thing is when you're getting or starting a business,
Yeah.
you need to understand what your appetite is. I see a lot of people around me running maybe family businesses or running small businesses where that take home after cost, forget salary, is spectacular, right? And these are family offices that are probably built over the last 30, 50, 70 years. And they have never had the need to sort of go out to market, right? So I think first thing is to understand how you want to build your business and at what rate, right? Funding, in my opinion, is only required if you need to grow faster than the industry, right? Now, why should someone do that? Is because if there is an opportunity, the idea is, can you be an early player in that space, or can you be someone who can scale very quickly, right? And that's when I think funding sort of comes in. I think we shouldn't generalize this entire approach. Earlier, what was funding? Funding was go to the bank, take a loan. If I'm successful, I repay the loan. If I'm not successful, I default and I sell my assets, right? So, as a cycle of borrowing money has been happening forever. Right now, what's happening is that there are certain funds or investors whose appetite is large and are willing to give high risk capital. They understand that this is high risk capital. They will either get a significant multiple or it will go bust. Right? So when they get into this, they're very clear in terms of, as a founder, I think it's very important to not raise funds for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Right? You need to understand that if you are maybe creating a market, you are creating an industry, or you need to spend to, I don't know, acquire certain services or set of customers, but there has to be a specific agenda and a plan to eventually reach a path of profitability. I think startups, you name some of the startups or companies that probably have not been able to reach a positive outcome.
Yeah.
This is usually happened when their path to profitability was later than the amount of cash that they have,
Yeah.
right? So I think that in itself is a very fundamental question that companies need to look at and be very conscious about. Because sometimes what happens is I may think that I will get money, but macroeconomic conditions sometimes change,
Yeah.
right? Say the market crashes or something happens in politics or external things in the world, right? Certain things lead to lesser money flowing in where high risk capital reduces. So I think there's a lot of factors, but startups need to be more conscious about it. But I am never pro funding or no funding. There's you figure out the kind of business you're in and how big the problem is. If I am trying to solve a problem where other companies are valued at probably 12 billion and 19 billion, I cannot solve it bootstrap,
Yeah.
right? I need to create a very strong infrastructure. But there are a lot of other examples where you can take on slower growth as well. So I think there's no one answer here.
Yeah.
I think the idea is to be more conscious, and I think that's happened, right? The companies that you're talking about, the ecosystem is also really immature.
Yeah.
So investors and startups are also raising money at a lot of high valuations.
Right.
But those things have really changed now.
Yeah.
I think the amount of due diligence and several other factors, things are automatically, it's evolving. So these cases will always over time become lesser and lesser.
So now, as a student, after my graduation, if I need to start a startup, let's say, or during my college life itself, what will be the 3 factors that you will be suggesting to majorly focus on? Because I personally have no experience. So let's say I'm starting after a year and I have an idea. I have a problem, I found the problem, and I need to start it. Because starting is very important.
Yeah.
हम रुकते हैं before starting. We
Yeah.
think a lot, but we don't end up starting. So what are the 3 factors you will be telling me?
I think first and foremost is, I mean, and I've used some jargon since we've gone through a lot of
Correct.
accelerators,
Yeah.
2 accelerators in our journey for the last 5 years. Is something called an ICP, which is an ideal customer profile.
Okay.
So you write down who your ideal customer is. We use this very freely internally. If somebody comes to me and says, I want to do something, I always ask them, is that particular entity or person our ICP?
Yeah.
Do we want to work with them or not? So I think very important for anyone getting into something to understand who their buyer is.
Right.
Their profiling being very clear. I think second stage is having some sort of MVP, right? Today building an MVP is very easy. It wasn't maybe 5-10 years ago. What is an MVP? Assuming it's a technology business, build something, right? That you can tell your prospective customer. Now, to build something, at times you don't need to maybe code something as well, right? Today there are so many tools. You can, like when I had started Thrive, my website was on Webflow. It's a no-code tool. I put it together in like 15 minutes, right? Use a certain platform, see if people are signing up, are they willing to pay, what services they're offering. Try to sort of go back and see, is there a market for what you're trying to do? So always get started and experiment with an MVP. I think the third stage is more from a proof of concept perspective. Once you have written commitments of people willing to pay you, or maybe some sort of interest, then it makes sense. But I think biggest mistake, like you said, is people try and figure out how they can build the perfect product. That never happens. I think you need to kind of get started, because there'll be several iterations. If you ask me, in my personal opinion, you shouldn't start when you are in college. If you have no experience, I think you should always look at getting a little bit of experience, maybe even 12 months. Be very clear about it, that I'm working here for 12 months to gain certain knowledge. Today, all founders hire for CEO office, founder office, where you can get a lot of information. But I think it will be important to kind of understand more before sort of diving.
So, thank you so much, sir. It was really honored to have you here. We are extremely overwhelmed to have you. It was a great podcast, and I hope our audience also enjoys watching this. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.